anyway, Joanne's brother Danny told the older couple that lived right there in the area that we might have some new neighbors because Howie and Joanne came and looked at this other place. And that was Hubert and Margie Sims. Hubert was 75, Margie was 73. And Hubert said, tell them to come and look at this place. We need to sell it. And I'll make them a better deal than what they'd get over there. So her brother called and we were very excited. We knew them, but knew very little about the place that they had. And we went right away and talked to them. And we spent a lot of time visiting with them, and it was very obvious that they wanted somebody to come there and live on the place. They had lots of opportunity to sell it to investors. At that time, there was a lot of people buying land in the Mile City area, breaking it up, and a lot of things. The sodbuster deal was going on, and they just weren't interested in that. So we kept talking to them, and finally we realized it was going to be difficult. Joanne's dad was very excited, and he had a section and a quarter of land that he owned 50% in Canada with another person. And he said, you know, we could sell that and help if you could get the down payment. Maybe you could make some kind of deal. And my brother, of course, was very anxious for this to happen too. And it was going to be a real strain for him. My family was very concerned because they thought we were putting everything at risk. We pretty much were mortgaged to my dad, to my uncle. And, you know, we were really sticking our necks out, both of us. I even remember going into the North 40 bar in Whitewater, and an elderly gentleman that I knew and respected came and sat down by me and said, what are you doing? Are you crazy? You can't do that. You can't just go buy a place and start. You guys are going to lose everything your dad and, you know, your uncle put together if you do this. And I don't, you know, today we probably might have been that same person. I don't know. But at the time, the Simses were anxious for us to do something. And Gary Anderson, I visited with him about it, and it was obvious that they didn't need a lot of money. They'd lived through the 30s, and they had more money than the bank than they could ever spend. When they talked about their kids, we always envisioned people our age, early 20s, but they were actually, their kids were old enough to be our parents, and they weren't interested in coming home. So we pitched them this idea of a reverse declining balance that Gary Anderson showed me. And actually the payments got bigger, started out small and got bigger every year for 30 years. And we proposed that to them. And I think today that we would wonder if somebody, I think back about proposing that to somebody 75 years old. Give us a 30-year mortgage and let us pay you a little bit at the beginning, and we'll pay you more every year until the 30th year. But, you know, they went for it, and they wanted us there. They stayed, they kept 3,000 acres with all the buildings, and we moved to a spot where Hubert's dad had been. There hadn't been anybody lived on that place since 1949. This was in 1979. So basically we were starting with no buildings, and we got a trailer house and a shop, and we set up there, and we had
half a barn and one tree.
Yeah, I guess.
Those were the buildings.
Hubert and Margie Sims, who we bought the ranch from, lived next to us for 10 years as another set of grandparents. They came to hold our kids, and you know, it was a kind of an unusual relationship how we got the ranch from them and how close we ended up being to them. We paid them every dollar we got from them, and we knew they wanted that, and you know, but it was a business relationship that turned into being a real close personal relationship for us too. We had Cottonwood Grazing Association, which ran 3,700 head of cattle. It was an association of 3 big ranches that went out of business in the 60s and late 60s, and was a great thing for all the young producers around there. Most of us were allowed to get around 100 to 150 head of cattle and run on that association. That association kept a lot of people on ranches. And then over the years, these places sold off, or the shares sold. They were real good, equity and quick cash. If somebody wanted to move them, there was always someone willing to buy. By 2000, I guess, moving ahead fast, we owned 459 shares of that, and the association decided to divide up the land and put it all into the ownership. So that was a big boost for us because we got that equity by owning that land. We had our loans paid off as an association. So that land went from being shares in a corporation to being our land. And of course, a lot of it was BLM too, but